Okay, this is an update for the tube preamp build. You can see that I stuck with the license plates to make the chassis. Here are where the tubes would stick out. This is the front. You got yourself input, high-low gain switch, gain control, output, fuse, on-off switch, and pilot light. So that's the front. We got the side. There's the back. Only thing here is the input for the power supply, and then we're back to the front here. And then so let's just check out the inside. It's the same power supply circuit that I used in the last build, all the way up to the rectifier, and also including the smoothing caps or filter caps. So I was getting 12 volts to the filaments this time. Yay. I was getting 300 volts DC out of my voltage doubler rectifier circuit here. So it was like $299. Yeah, it's 300. Then going into the filter caps, I was getting less than what I thought I should have been getting into these circuits. I'm not sure why, but it was, instead of on the Altec 1566A schematic, it had going into the plate of the first half of valve 1 here at pin 6, it had it at like 100 volts, and I think out of into pin 1 was which is the other half of the plate of the other half of the tube, like 105. One was 100, one was 105. But this B plus high, or I'm sorry, this is B plus low going to valve 1. The one side was 43 and the other side was 50. So I'm not sure why I was getting lower voltage, but I can tell you this: the Altec schematic didn't have this section here. You know, it had a totally different power rectifier and power supply. So, but tubes were lighting up nicely. You might notice I've got some crazy stuff going on here. I've got some wires, detached here. And I'll give you a quick background about that. I don't want this video to be 20 minutes like the previous one. So, whenever I fired this thing up for the first time, I think I know now where, like, on the Addams Family, whenever they're like tuning in a radio and there's that noise, it's like, and it's like squealing and stuff like that. I would move, I forget which wire it was. I think it was definitely this one going into pin 7, the input. Oh yeah, and I'll go over the grounding real quick here. I don't know if I did that. The only place the ground, and I used this 14 gauge solid core wire everywhere except for here going to the output and here going to the input. So, oh gosh, and here too. I ran out of this, so I just used my 18 gauge wire for that. But the only place that the ground is connected to the chassis is at the input, and also safety earth bond right here straight from out of the power source. So chassis, grounded to chassis, nowhere else. This grounds the power transformer. This one is not grounded. This is a ground for the filter caps, and actually it goes to the first valve, and then their first half and second half of the, I'm sorry, this is the second valve. Did I say that? First valve, first half, second half of the first valve ground here. So those grounds are split, and then the output has its own separate ground. So the grounding scheme, and especially like it's quiet. You know, I don't think I'm getting any ground loop hum from this setup. I don't think, because it's the same setup that I used in the original one, and it was completely quiet. So I mean, there wasn't even a, when I was recording, there wasn't even a little line that, you know, of noise, you know, zzz, you know, hovering down at the bottom. It was just, you know, it was quiet. So that said, when I fired this thing up, it was squealing like awful. And then I would move this wire, which you can see, I'll tell you that in a second too. Look at this thing. You can see well, I'll tell you what I did in a second. But this is the input into pin 7. And it was like, when I got it close to like some of these wires, it was like, it was doing all kind of weird, you know, I could have made like a crazy theremin, you know, type thing with it, you know. So I was like, oh man, I think this needs to be shielded, right? Like I need this long, insane wire that's just floating around this chassis to be shielded. And I didn't have shielded wire, and I don't want to order shielded wire and all that kind of stuff. And to tell you the truth, my previous build had no shielded wire, and it was quiet as heck. The only thing that was wrong with it was that the power transformers were overheating because I had some. I guarantee it was something to do with the with the smoothing cap circuit, all this stuff, because it was overloading this. It was only giving like 4 volts out of this, out of the 12 volt side, and so it was overloading this and heating them up, and smelled like it was gonna fry these things. So I'm pretty sure the original circuit, the only thing that was wrong with it really was here. It had nothing to do with any of this wiring that I had there on the original circuit. So that said, I had no shielded wires in that circuit, so I figured, well, but if you remember, well, if you look at the previous video, all the tubes were like right next to, like if this was the wiring for the tubes, just like it is here, the controls were like this close. So I could run this cap straight from pin 6 straight to wherever it goes now. I forget where it goes, but I think it was like the volume pot or something like that. So I'm just saying, for instance, I could go straight to where I needed to go with a wire that was just, you know, short. I didn't need this long wire to get from here all the way to here in the previous build. So I was like, let me try shielding this thing. So I don't know what I thought would be a good idea. And I didn't want to desolder all this stuff, and especially this is tight back here, so I didn't want to take out, you know, this solder joint here and then have to refinagle it and all that kind of mess. So I just wrapped around a wire that was about 4 times the length of the signal wire, wrapped around the wire and duct taped it. So now I have this insanely thick wire that has another wire wrapped around it, hoping that would do something fun and not have that squealing sound. Then I had grounded that bad boy to the ground of the input, but not to the other side. So I only grounded it at one side, and so hoping that would do it. But it was still doing the crazy squeal thing. So I was like, okay. And I noticed that a connection to this switch, the high-low gain switch, whenever I'd fiddle with some of these wires here. Now this was previously connected to this switch, so I could go straight to the pot and straight to the one side, instead of hitting both sides of valve 1, it just went straight into one side and cut out like the second half of this valve, so it wasn't so hot, so you have your choice of high and low gain. That's what this does. Either way, this is now, look here, pretty much I was like, well, let me try to, because I noticed I was fiddling around here and it was making noise and then not making noise, and then there was a short up in here somewhere from what I thought, and I was like, well, this high-low gain switch was the only one thing that wasn't in the previous build. Everything else is exactly the same wiring. There's nothing different. So I was like, well, let me try to remove this from the equation. So I was like, here's my thought process. That high gain, when it wasn't squealing like terribly, it was still buzzing terribly. So I was still able to test how the gain worked, how this worked high or low. And again, just like the previous build, the high gain, which is how the previous build was only high gain, it didn't have a low gain option. It was usable to about 1/2 on the gain knob, and then anything past that was just like super, well, not super, but it started clipping right then, you know what I mean? And I don't want a bunch of clipping for my bass sound. So I was like, okay, look, and then the low gain though, I've got up until about half before it starts clipping, and then full on is probably where the high gain would be, probably around, well, maybe half or something like that. So I've got more room with the low gain on the, I've got more room on the knob before it starts clipping. So I had some adjustments there, and I appreciated that. So here's what I did. I said, okay, I'm getting rid of this, and I'm going to wire the input straight into the pot to bypass the first half of this valve to make it only a low gain, make it only the low gain, to see if removing this switch from it. Plus I was like, hey, I don't want the high gain anyway. It's not useful for my application. So I'm just going to bypass that. So low gain, boom, into here, still buzzing like crazy. So it was still buzzing. And so, at this point I was frustrated. So I looked around and, found, some things that I thought might be it, and tapping around with a pencil and seeing what was, at this point it wasn't squealing. It wasn't doing the squealing thing. Because that would have been this, I do believe. Either way, it wasn't squealing any longer. It was only like zzz, like it was a constant, and it was definitely 60 cycle hum. So and these I think were fine, because I brought the wire close to the B plus high and low, and it had no effect on it. I thought maybe that it would get louder, whatever, whenever you got close to that thing. But it didn't, so I figured, oh, okay, cool. So I'm poking around up here, and I notice that whenever I get close to this, the input of the potentiometer, that it's cutting out, and I can get it to a point where it's humming, and then not humming, and then I've got a signal. There's a point on this where it was humming without a signal, not humming with no signal, and humming like almost inaudibly with just a tiny bit of noise coming out on my meter, on my recording device. So I'm tapping this thing, and I'm like, okay, I think I broke this thing whenever I desoldered it the first time. I don't know what I did, but I know I bent this a couple times, and I think I broke this. But I finagled with it and just kind of moved it into a place where it was working. So this now works, and it sounds decent. Like here, pretty much, it sounds like a kind of like a boost pedal, like a low, well, not like maybe a mid-gain overdrive that really doesn't affect the tone much at all. Like I did some ABs. It warms it up a tiny bit because I think probably maybe the 500K pot was like, you know, who knows, maybe it cuts just a tiny bit of highs, but it's still pretty bright, and the distortion seems to be it's favorable. It's pretty nice, you know. I don't see where I would use distortion, but here's the deal. Because I think I'm going to have to replace this pot still, because I don't want to have to deal with, you know, whenever if I touch this, it you know, goes on and off. I don't want a shorted thing, you know what I mean? I don't want that. So what I think I'm going to do is do a single 12AX7 circuit where the first half, because I'm only using half of one of these anyway, where what I want to do is where the first half is a gain stage, and the second half is the DC coupled cathode follower. So it would just be, I would just be using one half of a 12AX7 to do this job and one half to do this job. So I could just use one tube to do the gain stage on one half and the cathode follower on the other half. So I could make my circuit, I think, a lot simpler. And also I wanted to use the other tube to do a the tone stack that is used on the B15NF Ampeg bass amp. They use a 6SL7 tube, but I can, you know, I'm gonna mess with it, and then it's only one tube in the preamp, so it's a 6SL7 that drives a tone stack and then goes straight into an external jack for an external amp, but then at the same time it goes to the rest of that particular amplifier. So I think you could couple a bunch of amplifiers together if you take the output jack of the Ampeg B15N, any B15. I think they all, have that external amp jack that's right before the power section of the amplifier. So I'm going to mess with that now. I'll probably just take this whole thing apart. I don't think there's really any need to do a test as far as, like, you know, how it sounds, because it pretty much sounds like an overdrive pedal. You know what I mean? Nothing really different. And it's not flavored in any way. It's just boost and a little bit of nice crunch that is, you know, it's not all like fizzy, grindy. It's like a smooth distortion. It's pretty nice. Either way, sorry for this 20-minute long video. I should have probably made it shorter. But on to the next thing. I'll probably have this torn apart again soon. Okay, holla at your boy. Bye.